Alrighty, g'day guys. Welcome to a patch, I guess it's like reaction analysis video about Legion TD 3.44J, so the newest updated version. So what I'll do is I'll basically burn through all the points and do a little TLDR at the end. And yeah, just sort of analyze each, give you my thoughts, opinions. I'll let you know if I've played it around a lot with it or not so much yet. So yeah, let's get into it. Alrighty, so new primary mode, the Profit Pick -PP. I like this thing for sure. I think we're going to mess around with it a little bit more and see if it's like competitive or more competitive than the current PH, which I'm not sure. Maybe, maybe not, because the roles will overall be stronger, but I guess there'll be less variance between the stronger and weaker roles. We'll see. I'm not sure, but it's definitely interesting and it is competitive. But maybe it's not the way, but maybe it is. Hard to say. But it's really cool to have in the game for sure. Right, secondary mode Chaos. Rounds get random armors and attack types, which is really cool, but not competitive, obviously. Very, very RNG, but you know, it's fun. I don't see myself playing it very often though. Alright, bug fix, that's nice, so you can actually debug pirates and they won't screw you over. Alright, next we've got Servant. Gold cost reduced from 40 to 35. Okay, this thing is probably worth about 20 gold, if that, so I'm not overly excited about that. I mean, it's in the right direction. Unupgraded Servant is still complete garbage, so stay away from it. Slave Master. Right, cost increased by 5, so it's 160 in total still. Now for 40 gold, you can buy a Servant, which spawns on the same position. They like stack on top of each other, it looks really funny. And yeah, you can have up to 4 of these. And each of these servants, or slaves, increases the maximum HP of the Slave Master by 50, and its armor by 1. Sorry about that, just needed to cough. Yeah, so what do I think about this unit? So compared to before, it's much better, right? Old Slave Master, you'd see it very rarely as an ad for level 3 when you had absolutely nothing else, right? Now I think this unit is actually relatively playable, but I still think it's bad, okay? So you spend 40 gold to buy something that's garbage, you get 50 HP, which is nice I guess, but the armor by 1, you gotta take this with a grain of salt, because the Slave Master in total does not have that much HP, right? So let's say you buy four servants, right? With the gold. So you get 200 extra HP, so let's say you get 900 HP. 160 gold, 700 HP, sounds about right. I'm not sure on the exact numbers. Let's just say you have an even 1k HP, right? 3 armor, the base 3 armor is 15% damage reduction, so you go up to 7. It's probably about another 15%. So realistically, all that armor is only going to add to 150 health, like at the best. And I think it's actually a little bit less than that. So don't get too baited by this +1 armor, even though it sounds really nice. I think it's actually quite low impact. So overall, this unit is still bad. I would still stay away from it. But it is now playable if you have nothing else. It is now it feels far better to play this than it used to, so you know, that's something I suppose. And you know, it's going in the right direction, it's interesting, it's thematic, and it's not completely garbage anymore, so it's playable, which is good. You know, don't want every unit to be fucking top tier, that'd just be a bit boring, so I like it. Maybe it needs a small buff, but I like it still. Right, dragon aspect. So, this one's like a bit hard, right? Because I think this unit is not overpowered. I think it's interesting, but I think it is a problem. So let me just go through the ability first, and then I'll talk a bit more about what I think. So, new ability, Heatwave. Keep in mind it's still got its AoE just on its normal attacks that it used to have. Every third attack, release a Heatwave that causes 2 effects. These effects last 5 seconds. So, it burns the ground for 26 to 34 total damage in 150 range. Okay. I don't know if that's damage per second or damage overall. Right. Heavy and fortified units have their armor melted down to unarmored in a 400 range, okay? And this can actually, like, the bug, it can melt its own armor, which is kind of funny. And the attack time got an increase. Okay, so what do I think about this unit? Firstly, let's talk about the small upgrade. Right, the small unit for this Spawn of Dragon. Spawn of Dragon is very strong on levels 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so you're basically never going to break a spawn on 1, 2, and 3. This aspect, this Burning Ground is useful versus Sends on 5, but overall, if you're a little bit overbuilt, you'll be fine versus Send on 5 with aspect, right? Because it's a one-shot, and then it has the AoE on everything else, it supports its other units. It likes melee units, but it can function with ranged on level 5. Okay, level 6, this thing is nuts, always mid. Versus like any fucking Send, it's super strong. Level 7, this thing is extremely strong again, okay? So, the concern I have with this, even though I don't think the unit is actually overpowered or anything, I think the unit itself is, in the sense of an entire game, I think it's relatively balanced. I think that balance is too skewed towards the early and a little weak in the mid game, right? So for me, this flat damage burn, okay? So what is a flat damage AoE ability going to do? It's going to be fucking nuts in the early game where creeps don't have very much HP, and it's going to be fucking useless in the mid and late game stages where creeps have a lot of HP, right? Flat damage, it's, you know, just not surprising at all. It's every single game ever. If you have these things that do nice flat damage, then they're strong early. And then it's things like percent damage or like scaling damage, right? That'll be better in the mid and late. So obviously this flat damage is super nuts on 7, right? So what does this basically mean? You've got another fast kill speed on 1 that is pretty much will never break 1 to 3. And pretty much will never break 5, 6, or 7. Right? So what meta does that push you towards? Pushes us back towards the King 10 meta. I don't want to see units that pushes back towards the King 10 meta because that fucking sucked. Where it was like very common for both teams to go like King 10, 15, and all the games were, or so many of the games were very low budget. They were very RNG depending on spawns on level 10. And very, very role dependent as well. So I think this unit pushes us towards a meta that generally is not wanted, which is, I think, where a lot of the criticism about it is coming from. I don't think the unit itself is actually particularly nuts. I think it is just a little too safe on 5, 6, and 7, considering how safe spawn is on 1 to 3. And then that creates a problem, right? But anyway, so we've talked about this first ability. This is the one that I think creates the problem, right? So ability number 2, the melting armor. So I think I like this ability. It's really cool. I think when in the mid game, I think when you have it and it's useful, then it's cool. I don't think spending 605 gold for it is worth it. I think it is too expensive to actually, and I don't think it'll affect enough creeps to make this worth spending the money on. I think if you've got something like a dragon aspect for 7, then you want to cover 14, so you end up with full elite archers or something. I think then you're really happy to have the melt armor on 15, things like that, yeah? So I think it makes sense. I think it's good potentially on level 20 if you're setting up primarily for level 21 with, say, like Necros or Elite Archers backline. Or say Necromancers, like Necros melee with some frontline, right? Like slow aura, I don't know, a couple of, like 3 Hydras and then a bunch of Necros backline or something like that, right? I think you're going to be really happy to have the melt on 20 then, because this dragon will frontline a bit for the Necros. Not that it's a particularly strong frontline, but the melt on 20 could be very, very useful if you're running a lot of Pierce, setting up for 21. I think the melt on 30 might be fucking nuts, depending what units you have. I can see like a heavy Meridian line with like a lot of debuffs and then a bunch of Meridians as debuff and damage, and then just 3 dragons split across the line. They melt the bosses, like holy shit. I could see that being super nuts on 30. So overall, what do I think of this unit? I think it's a little bit too strong early for me to be entirely happy with it because of this flat damage. But I think overall, it's cool, it's interesting, it's thematic, there's actually a reason to build it now, which is nice. RIP Spawn Holder, which I'm kind of sad about actually, because Spawn was always difficult to play, largely due to level 5. Yeah, Spawn was always difficult to play if you didn't just blindly overbuild. And now you kind of have no reason to ever not upgrade this on 5, I feel like, unless you have, you know, the really good ads for Spawn YOLO that made it easy, like Magnetor. Or Greymane into Aspect on 7, something like that could be fucking nuts. I don't know. Anyway, it's interesting. We'll see how it shakes out, because these are still early impressions. Alrighty, Cannon. Yes, fuck you, Cannon. Right, attack time increased. Good. So, attack slower. Scattershot. Targets hit reduced from 8 to 6. That's the Pierce ammo, so good. Literally hits 2 less creeps. Exploding Shells hits 1 less creep. And Big Balls deals 35 less damage. This is all good things. Cannon looks a lot weaker in the early game now, particularly with that attack speed reduction. Yeah, it's still very playable. I think it's more comparable to Night Saber now. Before it was clearly superior, I think it's relatively comparable. It's still good in situations where it's good. It's just not bullshit OP on like 7. It's weaker on 10, but still does damage. It's breakable, breaks on 1. Believe it's breakable on 3 to a Blood Orc. Probably still fine versus Ferb. You need to build more for 5 now. It's actually very bad on 6 now. So I think the unit is not very. I think the unit is rather balanced now. In the mid game, like, you're still happy to have Cannon for the big balls versus 17. I think that's still strong. It's less strong, but I think it's still strong. Also, it's worth noting that the Chaos Armor reduction didn't get touched at all, so I think it's still nice for like 20 and 30 with that ammo. Okay, moving on. Cannon. You sound balanced now, but I'll still make me nervous every time I say it. Alright, Phoenix. Energy shield is gone, out the window. Mana regen reduced from 13 to 10 per second, okay. The maximum mana is increased from 375 to 950. Alright. So now it has an ability Rebirth. On death, it spawns an attackable egg that hatches into a new Phoenix after 3 seconds. Egg's got 3 fortified armor, HP is equal to the Phoenix's current mana when it dies. Alright. And then the Phoenix respawns with a max HP equal to double the current HP of the egg on hatch. Okay? So the HP of the egg is equal to the Phoenix's current mana. So let's say the Phoenix has 950 mana and then respawns full HP. That will get you 1900 health, which is the max HP of the Phoenix. Okay. So it can never increase its health, it can only go down. Alright, fair enough. Unlimited number of uses, I believe. I'm actually certain you need some amount of mana for that to happen, and I'm fairly certain you go back down to 0 mana after you revive, and you need however much mana to actually go into the egg. I believe that's how it works. Anyway, when hatching from the egg, releases a burst of light, blinding enemies, causing them to miss 20% of their attacks for 5 seconds. Okay, so it's a little AoE curse, 500 range. How impactful do I think this is? Early, you're never going to have a Phoenix, but it's fairly useless. Mid-game, I honestly think it's fairly useless. It's mostly about the sends. Good versus bosses though, good versus 20 I suppose. And I think late game this is actually pretty nice. I don't think it's like the most impactful, but I think it's nice to have. And then this is the interesting one. Focus Energy. Converts 20% of damage from attacking into mana to prepare for rebirth. Okay, so it gets its mana quicker. And then reduce attack time by 0.03 per attack to 0.5 minimum. Maximum, I think this is meant to be. or 0.5 minimum attack speed or attack time. Anyway, its attack speed increases when it keeps attacking, and the attack speed resets upon rebirth. So, I believe this is 2 attacks a second. Not sure, but the Phoenix starts going fucking nuts when it's fully buffed. So, what do I think about this unit? I think when you have a lot of value and it can sit in the sort of midline, I think this ability is fucking nuts. I think it just lets it stack up damage and get into like a really, really strong DPS. If I compared it to say Griffin, just because it's got the same attack armor type, I think Griffin will do more damage for the first, I don't know, 5 or 6 seconds, and then I think Phoenix will start taking over with the attack speed buff. So yeah, it's definitely high on the DPS. So the question is, how do you use this thing, right? So I think straight up, single target, no AoE damage, medium armor, only 1900 HP, too expensive to start with on level 1. I think you never use this in the early game. I think it's just too expensive and isn't very good in the early. Okay, so in the mid game, this is the question for me. It's if I'm building anti-15-16, which are the 2 levels you'd really consider building this unit, and then 20 is another matter. So if you're building against 15 and 16, would I build a Phoenix or would I just get Seer of Darkness? So for me, and I'm not sure about this, but looking at the unit, reading the unit, what it does and all that, I actually don't think it's a frontline. I think if you frontline it, it won't have very much mana on the egg, and I think the egg will just die. Okay? So I don't think you can use this unit as a pure frontliner. So the way I think this unit should be used is I think it's actually a midline unit. So I think you want your front line, so let's say for 15 you've got 2 Tox in front of you. I think then you might want a Phoenix or 2, and then some backline, so say 2 Tox and a Magna, couple of Phoenix, and then some backline behind it. So I think the way is that the front line goes forward, the Phoenix starts attacking, gets its focus energy going, and gets some time to do some damage, build some mana, right? Then your front line dies, your backline and your Phoenixes have already killed like a reasonable amount of the creeps. The Phoenixes have more or less mana, then they get attacked, they go into egg, so they have like 950 HP fortified armor, so they're actually relatively tanky overall. And then they're tanking, the Phoenixes and the eggs are tanking for your backline to finish off the rest. And if you get revives, excellent. If you don't, c'est la vie. In my opinion, that is the way to use this unit. But I don't think for 15 that you'll really have enough value, considering that Phoenix is like 745 gold. It's very, very, very expensive. 725. Seer's 325, yeah, 725 gold. So I think that the first time this unit will be good is 20. I think it will honestly not be that great on 21. Maybe like one of them is fine. But then I think after 21, this will just be a really strong DPS unit. When you start to have a lot of value, a lot of frontline, and fights on your lane take longer, I think Phoenix will just start to pop off with this focus energy. Purely as a DPS. This ability is awesome. Right, it's really thematic, really cool, really interesting. I'm not actually sure that you'll get that much use of it. I think this is the juicy shit right here. I could be wrong, but I think the focus energy, the stacking attack speed is pretty nuts. Alright, other question I've got. Does the egg get a parasite buff? Not sure about that. Just interesting. Alright. Next, Militia. Attack damage increased by 3 on the low and high roll. Cool. Attack time reduced by a little bit, so it attacks a bit faster. That's nice. Now for the ability, purchase equipment. So you can buy different items. You can buy 1 of each weapon and 1 of each armor. As in, you can choose to buy 1 of the 3 weapons and 1 of the 3 armors. So you got a long spear. increases the range to 300, damage by 20, and it changes to pierce. Cool. Got a throwing axe, increase the range to 425 and adds 25 damage. Okay. And then the giant hammer increases the attack damage by 50, adds 20% AoE, and the attack speed is reduced by 25%, gives you siege. Cloth armor gives you 200 HP and 20% attack speed with light armor. Chainmail, it's the dumb one, gives you 400 HP, keeps it medium. Plate armor gives it 600 extra HP, gives it heavy armor, but reduces move speed by 10%, attack speed by 5%, and it's also quite expensive. So, Militia. I think it's very, very comparable to Veteran. I actually did a video of Militia testing. I was testing the unit for probably about 2.5 hours, and I came out with a video that's hopefully like 15-20 minutes long, that just shows the way that I think is optimal to play Militia as a YOLO. It's the best way I found, with a 3-0 start into 640 value for 5 and 6. Right? So I think it's comparable to Veteran, because Veteran is stronger on 5, Veteran is a lot stronger on 8. I think Veteran is also a little bit better on 4, but Militia is not going to die on 1 or 2, unlike Veteran, and Militia is also better on 6. So, yeah, what do I think overall? I think the unit is very playable now. I think it's an average YOLO. It actually does have overbuild potential with like giant hammer spam. The thing about that is it's full dead value for 10 and full dead value mid-game if you do that, so I think it's almost never correct to do so. I think it's worth saying that like just two or 3 hammers, you can actually be very, very strong on 6, so it's worth considering an overbuild for 6. If you're just concerned about that, like if you're 6-1 for level 5 and you stay like 6-1 for 6, I think you'll actually find yourself mid. So anyway. Long spear, I'll just go through each of the weapons. Long spear, I haven't found a use for this. I think it's crap at the moment. Yeah, it feels really bad, to be honest. Throwing axe, I think this is needed for 8, because it's 50 gold to knock a hit off. If you have things that will do like supplementary damage, or something like a captain, or a flying machine. Not sure if this gets buffed by flying machine, actually. But regardless, it turns an awkward 4 hit into an awkward 3 hit. So this is why Militia is bad on 8. The increment's very bad. So if you have something to support it, and turn the 3 hit into a 2 hit, maybe this would be a Necrolite with the fire archers doing little increments of damage. Ugh, pardon me, needed to sneeze. Necrolite with the fire archers doing little increments of damage, or an aura like a captain or a helicopter, then I think Militia is suddenly not too bad on level 8. But from what I found, pure Militia, you need about 1000 value. Okay, which is acceptable. Alright. Giant hammer, 60 gold for it. Increase the attack damage by 50, I read through it already. This thing's pretty fucking nuts. So the YOLO build that I came up with used 1 hammer, and it was pretty much there to boost you through the early game with a 3-0 start, and to let you hold 6 without building. Right, so the hammer's really good. When I was testing it, if you could build 2 hammers in the early game, but then it pretty much ripped your YOLO on 5. You needed over 700 value to hold 5 with 2 hammers. So I would stay away from the double hammer if you're looking to YOLO. The hammer has overbuild potential for sure, still very bad on 5. Because you don't get the AoE. But yeah, it's very, very strong early on. One hammer militia and 2 peasants. I was able to hold warriors probably about 30% of the time. And very rarely did I leak more than about 4 or 5 creeps. And this is with 200 value. So I think that's quite nice overall. Alrighty. So yeah, giant hammer is very strong. Armor, cloth armor. Increase the HP by 200, attack speed by 20%, changes the armor type to light. I actually thought this would be a bit of a bait, but my YOLO actually required this on level 3. to improve the consistency versus Blood Orc. So if there's no send coming, then you don't need to get this, I suppose. But yeah, makes you a lot stronger on level 3 for sure. Means this thing doesn't just rip to the creeps. It means your Hammer Militia doesn't just get screwed by the creeps with the medium armor. Does make you weaker on 4. Does make you a bit weaker on 5. But I found it was necessary, otherwise trying without it, and with just trying with like more peasants or something, I found that I would, not often, but sometimes leak half the wave on level 3 to Blood Orc. So that's obviously unacceptable. With this light armor, I was able to hold a good amount of the time, and generally wouldn't leak more than 3 or 4 creeps. So I think this is overall relatively weak, but had a use. I found a use for it. Chainmail, increase the HP by 400. I think this is the best one. I think you want to keep your Militia medium armor for level 8 when you're YOLOing, because level 8 is very important to hold. So I think it's basically just correct to build this armor at some point, probably on level 8 when you have 50 extra gold. I think it's quite relevant there. I used 1 or 2 of them early. Needed 1 of them for level 4. I believe a second was needed for level 5. Yeah. So yeah, this thing I found use for it for sure. I think it's probably just the best one, even though it's the dumb and boring one. Alright, 70 gold for plate armor. I didn't find a use for this at all. I think if you're going for the Militia like holder, I think it could be worth it. I didn't actually test it with plate armor, but I think it could be worth it. For the YOLO, I think it's never worth it, because 5 is already difficult, 8 is already difficult. You give something heavy armor, like, nah. I'm spending 70 gold to make my lane worse on 2 levels where I'm already a bit weak. If I'm trying to YOLO, that's just not going to happen. Okay, Privateer. Pistol damage reduced by 10. Alright. And ranged attack time is its ranged attack speed is slightly quicker. So this is a nice little nerf, makes it a bit weaker on 7 and 10. It also doesn't one-shot level 3 unless you start with Privateer level 1. The thing is, 3-0, 2 Privateer, 2 Lubbers already it holds level 3 even with this nerf, so, versus Blood Orc. So, Privateer is still very strong. It's just a little less strong than it used to be. We'll see if this is enough. I suspect it might even need a bit more of a kick down, but it's in the right direction for sure. We'll just play out the unit, see how it goes. Right, Undead Privateer, cost reduced by 5, attack speed slightly increased. Realistically, this thing's still crap compared to Privateer. I think if you leak on 4 and then have 115 gold instead of 135 gold for level 5, I think you just feel slightly less bad about building Undead Privateer now. I think it's still not a good unit. Considering that you choose between Undead Privateer and Privateer, like, yeah, I know which one I'd rather have. Alright, Parrot. The overkill damage is now limited by that equation there, current HP plus max HP divided by 3. So pretty much what that means is you won't get the bullshit 300 damage for 20 gold on bosses, which is good, which is sad, but it's good. So I think Parrot is still useful on 10 as the return damage blocker, but it's definitely not insane anymore. Perhaps it's even slightly weak outside of an AoE comp. Yeah, so we'll see. I'm not too sure how much worse that will make the Parrot. I think it fixes the issue. Maybe it needs like 5 extra HP or something, but I'm not sure. Alright, Disciple. Its missile will now actually work in mid. That's nice. Pretty depressing to see the Disciple just standing there like a fucking idiot getting shot by pigs. That's always sad, so I like this. Pirate ship spawns. The pirate spawns now receive parasite buffs. Cool. You know, it's nice for sure. Little quality of life. Alright, Solar Villain. The HP is increased by 100 to match the tooltip. That's fine, but at the end of the day, this thing's in your backline. If the 100 HP on the Solar Villain ever matters, you're probably leaking anyway. So, I will say it's nice for level 3. Things like you can do things like Lord with Solar Villain if you don't have a very good roll and want to minimize your dead value, or don't have a very good roll early and want to minimize dead value. This is when that will be nice, going Solar Villain on 3. But besides that, fairly irrelevant, but you know, it's good. Colt, Bug Fix, Armor type did not match the tooltip, who cares, Colt's still fucking awful. Corrupted Ent, he was the Spirit Link caster apparently, there you go. Will no longer cast Spirit Link, it's probably a good thing. I believe the link didn't actually do anything, it was just visual, but even so. Right, Meridian, tooltip's now correct, same with Abno. I don't know what was actually wrong with their tooltips, but there you go. Gold cost, found several units with incorrect gold cost on either value or bounty, affected selling return gold and value calculation. One of these offenders was Zombie, cost 180 gold, it would tell you on the scoreboard it cost 190 gold. I don't know if any others, but you know, this is good. It's definitely good to just make sure everything's correct and all that. So yeah, what I'm going to do now is a very quick TLDR for those of you that just want to skip to the end. So, new primary mode profit pick, it's cool, we might play it. It's more competitive than, or it's potentially competitive, so it's interesting. Chaos mode, fun mode, never going to see it in LoL. Servant, still sucks. Slave Master, playable now, but pretty average. Dragon aspect, probably a little bit too strong, 5, 6, 7, relatively weak in the mid game. Too expensive to build for just the melt armor in mid game. If you have it and it works, then it's nice. Cannon, get fucked, you're nerfed. Pretty, still good where it's good, but a lot less oppressive early, which was the problem. Phoenix, I think it's too expensive early. I honestly think it's too expensive mid game. I think it's a very good damage dealer later on. 20 being its first good level. Militia, used to be garbage, now it's playable. Can overbuild with it, but I think it's incorrect. I think the YOLO is comparable to Veteran, better on 1 and 2, worse on 5 and 8. Privateer, little damage nerf, doesn't really affect it to be honest, it's still strong on every level it was strong before, doesn't affect its increments on level 5. Yeah, this thing's still going to be strong where it's strong and bad where it's bad, but it's just a little bit worse for 10. Undead, still sucks compared to Privateer, but hey, if you have to go undead it feels a little bit less bad. Parrot, the 300 damage versus boss for 20 gold is gone, rip Parrot. Mana Missile functions at mid, that's good. Spawn's getting Parasite buffs, that's nice, 100 HP, shouldn't really matter unless you get it on level 3, but hey, it's good. Colt, you're still garbage. There's no more Spirit Link, bye bye Spirit Link. Correct tooltip, and Zombie now is correctly listed at 180 gold on the scoreboard. Alrighty, that's the TLDR for any of you guys that didn't want to watch the full thing. Anyway, cheers very much for watching guys, I appreciate it. Like, subscribe, all of that, as you can see my OBS, and I'll catch you in the next one.